And we are live.
We are. Hello, and welcome back to Lifestyle Business.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Ann. And we are so excited to be back and ready to kick off the spring season. Today, we welcome back to the show many people who have been on our show with us or have just been in our lives as Launchpad members. Some honorary and some actual in our physical spaces. And so we're so excited about that. They are the types of folks that when we call it members are our magic. They're the reason that our spaces are so vibrant, bright, interesting, and they're working on really cool problems and facing lots of good questions in their business. And they're, living the entrepreneurial dream, as it were. So we are so excited to have them join us, and we're going to have a roundtable discussion today. And what we also are just grateful that these people are folks who are betting on us. And so we're betting on them. Want to bet on them. But first, before we get started, Canada. That's right. For our very large Canadian north of the border viewers, Canada, as we have been waiting with bated breath to find out if those borders will open, if the vaccine will get distributed, if restaurants will be able to survive the epic pandemic that still is going on north of the border. We got some news today.
What did we learn?
Well, it appears that the border will remain closed for another several weeks, and the 2-week quarantine is going to continue to stay in place, which personally means we aren't going to see our my family anytime soon. So Chris is sigh of relief. And I'm just teasing.
I'm just getting that in there because they're probably watching.
Yeah. But it has also been a fascinating, maybe not for everyone else, but at least for me, to get just a little continued glimpses into the Canadian psyche. And so for those of you who are not Canadian or don't spend a lot of time with Canadians, I'm pretty sure that Canadians would consider Californians like anti-vaxxers and anti-maskers, the way Canada has everything shut down. We still have our masks, but like basically it is so locked down up there. The numbers and the cases are coming down. It's hard, you want to be supportive, but it seems like we're losing a lot of support for the Canadian government. So all of you who wanted to move to Canada because Donald Trump was elected, I'm sorry, you would not be happy. Because you would still be in your homes, not able to go out. And in fact, my sister was driving to her home in a different province. And so she'd gone home to visit my family and my parents. And she met with my parents, do you guys remember this? Outside their condo complex, and had forced them to wear their coats, would not go into the building, and had an entire, cocktail party with my 90-year-old parents there. And then they returned back to their place in Quebec. And today I got to witness what Canadians do when they run for the border. So basically Ontario and Quebec would be like going from New Jersey to New York, California to Nevada, Louisiana to Alabama. There's no border, there's no process there. But the 10 minutes that we were on the phone between the time that they crossed into the Quebec border, they had Waze up. They were watching for police. The RCMP, they were like, there's the RCMP. They might pull us over. I was like, you're not doing anything wrong. And they were like, no. We've got to have our game faces on. Kate had her game face on. I think if the police had pulled them over, I was like, what would happen to you? And they were like, well, we would have to show them our documentation that we have a house in Quebec. And I was like, well, that doesn't seem that hard. Couldn't you just show them their license and registration? Well, yes, that's what we would do. And then she was like, and we might have to demonstrate why we were in Ontario. And I was like, okay, would you just show them their phone? And they were like, yeah, that's probably what would happen. And I'm like, what would be the worst case scenario in this scenario? And she was like, Well, we probably would go to the other bridge, but the amount of panic, Kate, it was amazing. I think there should be a TV show called, what did I say the TV show should be called? Crossing Borders Canada Edition. And it would be so scintillating that everybody would just turn it off and switch the channel. But now, before anyone switches the channel, shall we move on to the real show?
Let's move on to the real show. Yeah, we'll see.
That was for you, Canada. It's okay. You can open up safely. Wear your masks. Get vaccinated. It'll be good. It'll be really good. So let's add all of our folks. I'll do the intro. You bring our folks in. We're a little rusty. And now on to the round table. So joining us today, we have a huge group of people, which is going to be so exciting. From New Orleans, we have, I really got to get it good, don't I? I've been talking my Canadian accent all day. From New Orleans, Sabrina Short, the founder and director of Nolavate Black and Black Tech Nola, who's got some exciting things coming up. From East Nashville, Nathan Dohse, co-founder and COO of AGD Entertainment, an artist coaching, management, and booking company. From Newark's Yendor Productions, Michael A. Rollins, COO, Karim Willis, Chief Administrative Director, and Andrew Binger, Artistic Director for the Yendor Theater Company. And from Stockton, Aaron Gilbreath, founder of CPR Cert Pros, a CPR and life support education company certifying individuals and companies in basic life support as well as first aid. Let's get started. It is so great, first of all, to see you all virtually. We've gotten the chance to connect over the last couple of weeks, with the exception of Sabrina, who somehow I managed to not be able to find my Zoom link every single time. But it is great to see you guys. Before we get into the discussion, I thought we could just do a quick round robin and have you introduce yourselves. I'll call you up and then you can do the introduction. Talk a little bit about what your organization does and anything else that you think would be important for us to know. So I'm going to start with you, Nathan, because you're number 2 on my screen.
Sounds wonderful. Can you guys hear me okay?
You can.
Sure.
Got it. Cool. Awesome. Well, I'm Nathan Dohse. I'm here in East Nashville, Tennessee. And I work in the music business, primarily in artist management. Our company, AGD Entertainment, launched an artist development program called 0 to 60 in 2014. So we're coming into our 7th year of operations here. And in that time, we've worked with over 200 developing artists. Our focus is helping them find foundational elements for their careers, in their branding, in their strategies, marketing, PR, and basic operations. So very excited to see that program flourishing through the COVID situation. We actually saw a bit of an uptick, as I've heard from other coaching groups as well, that people saw that their lives can get turned upside down in seconds, days, weeks, and that their time should be better spent pursuing something that they love. So we saw a lot of new people saying, hey, I've always wanted to do music more seriously. And now that I've seen that everything that I did build for myself can fall apart, might as well build something that is true to myself, and seeing the arts flourish for people during those hard times. And so we were able to, come through last year with a lot of new talent coming in, and that was exciting. So a couple other fun things that we're excited about for this year is we were able to launch a scholarship program for our artist development in partnership with a group called Notes for Notes that puts studios and boys and girls clubs across the country. And so that's a really exciting launch for us. And then we're also announcing our first label clients this month. And so AGD Entertainment is moving into label operations in the music industry. So both exciting things for us. So
awesome.
That's me.
That's awesome, Nathan. I think you're tapping into something that's actually pretty interesting. When the chips are down, sometimes it gets so hard. You're like, well, it could all go away anyway. I might as well be working on something that I like.
Yeah, you lose your goose egg, and you don't have the securities that you're always going, oh, if I could just get to that point, like if I could just get my savings here, or if I could just get that job or the house or whatever it might be before I do the thing I love. And it's like, that can all go away so fast. And for us in Nashville, what a lot of people may or may not remember is that 2 weeks before COVID hit, we were hit by a massive set of tornadoes that took out a large portion of East Nashville. And then we had the bombing at Christmas time. And so Nashville's just been, on top of COVID, it's been a rough one for the people of Nashville. And so we saw a lot of people in this area too that just said, you know what, I got to go where my heart is. And people who had moved here to do music and never did it, they moved here for music and never did it. And now they're going, now's the time for me. So a lot of resilience in Nashville.
Hey, the one and only Sabrina Short.
Hi, everybody. Thank you guys for having me. We'll get that Zoom link together one day. And Nathan, I'm right with you 100%. It's like we don't have time to waste, right? It's like time is precious and we are used to doing the things that we love, right? I'm with you 100%. But I'm Sabrina Short. I am the CEO and founder of Nolavate, Black New Orleans Black Tech Collective. We bring Black tech professionals together here in the Gulf Coast region to increase the number of Black people in tech, like plain and simple. We want to grow the pipeline here from entry to exit. And I'm doing that work on a bullhorn, yelling out at people, telling them to do the right thing. And now we are planning our 4th annual Black Tech Nola conference. I'm so excited. We're about 38 days away. It will be June 28th through the 30th. And I'm super excited that Marcus Colston will be on our main stage. We're bringing Wendell Pierce. We're bringing the CEO of 1 Million Black People in jobs in 10 years, Mr. Maurice Jones. So I'm excited about all of the amazing things happening this year. Nathan, we are going to have a music summit within our conference for the first time this year. We're partnering with Geno Inc. and the Recording Academies to make that happen. We're going to have a whole panel with YouTube Music, 2 panels actually with YouTube Music, talking about tech and the future of music. So I'm super excited about that. But when I think about COVID, I had COVID during COVID. I had it before.
You were an OG COVID patient when it was me.
A survivor. Yeah, it was very, very difficult because it was at the beginning of the pandemic. So, everything was happening on the West Coast. I was actually supposed to be on the West Coast right after Mardi Gras. And so all of the flights were being canceled. All of the hotels were canceling. I was supposed to be at LinkedIn that week. They closed their offices. It was crazy. And so I'm like, what is going on? And then the following week, I was supposed to be at South by, had these amazing tickets, VIP, and I was like, yes, yes. They locked everything down, and that Monday, I had a fever. That Monday that the city shut down, I had a fever. And I was sick for months, and I was trying to figure out, how do I run an organization, and I'm sick? And for months, we didn't have any programming. We didn't have any activity. It was just me trying to live and survive. And I got around this time last year and said, you know what? I'm tired of being sick. I was going to the doctor like every day, like every week. Every week I had like a recurring doctor's appointment. And I said, you know what? I'm tired of being sick. We're going to do this conference. And I planned last year's conference in 6 weeks, and we had 1,500 registrations and 5,000 views in 3 days. And I still don't know how it happened. It happened. And, it really was the major pivot. Everybody's using the word pivot these days, but it really was like, I was planning this conference, and thanks to you guys, you gave us the space to do it. You gave us the support to do it, the encouragement to do it. It wouldn't have happened without you guys, because we literally didn't have a space to make it happen. And we're able to really, really make an impact. And so after the conference, of course, in New Orleans, everything we do is around food and music. And our programming was around food and music. And I had to think differently about how we were going to sustain moving forward. And so because there was such an amazing response around recruitment and diversity and inclusion, we shifted our work to diversity recruitment. And since then, we have about 45 partners in tech who are helping us recruit in the greater New Orleans area. So pivot, you do what you got to do to survive and figure it out. And hopefully you can make an even bigger impact than you ever dreamed. My original plans are out the window. We're doing something completely different than I had hoped. But it's better and bigger and greater. And so I'm so thankful for that.
I love the fact, Sabrina, that you were the last final event that happened at Launchpad New Orleans in its past space. And I hope that you'll be the next first event if and when we open back up in New Orleans.
Let's go. Let's do it. Let's go.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I love that you were that before our landlords decided to move on. Anyway, let's move on to Aaron from Stockton before you fall asleep on me. Aaron is constantly full of energy and has been a huge supporter of us. And he is actually one of our we do a scholarship program in Stockton with entrepreneurs and residents. And Aaron, first of all, came and helped give one of the most inspiring talks, also one of the best attended. And I found myself making some notes and referring back to that. And so I am a huge believer, and we can learn so much from everybody else, but Aaron has been just a huge support to our entrepreneurs and residents in Stockton, and I want to thank you for that. But let's get into the CPR Cert Pros.
So, hi everyone, I'm Aaron Gilbreath, owner, founder of CPR Cert Pros. We do first aid training for healthcare professionals in particular, also just for everyday regular lay rescuers. In the field for about almost 10 years now. Board certified RMA, phlebotomist, and American Heart BLS instructor, also a medic first aid training site. So we train individuals to become CPR instructors as well. So, how do we do during COVID? We thrived. The first part of it was really tough. The honesty of that, just building infrastructure and not knowing what was coming next, and also being in the medical field, having so many different emails sent to me from different physicians and my colleagues. Everybody was up in the air like everybody else was. So but we throve through it, and we're still here. Again, as Miss Short said earlier, the pivot, also Nika said it too, pivoting. I already had another company, which is that's what we were actually speaking on last time I was on the panel for you guys, teaching on business development. So I also own a company by the name of A1 Plus Academy, where we teach all things business and funnel creation. And my main target audience is for brand new entrepreneurs looking to start. So we help them with from market research to marketing to product planning, also just giving them the infrastructure needed for entrepreneurs to be able to thrive in their first 2, 3, 5 years of entrepreneurship. So that was a pivot for us. CPR did its own thing. It kind of held itself, did its own thing. But as far as A1, that's really where we're leaning toward now, because the company is growing. We offer coaching, 4-week coaching to help brand new entrepreneurs, startup, basically startup phase, product planning, all that stuff, and getting them to launch. So that's what we do. We show them how to, do your P&Ls, your analyses, your So much stuff is involved. Like I'm sure a lot of you guys that are CEOs know what it takes. So we just kind of give them that shortcut to help them to get there. That's pretty much what we do. There's so much more in that, but I'll pass it on to the next. Or and Chris, you can let me know what else you'd like for me to touch on.
Come back around once we get everybody intro, but that's fair. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So the team from Yendor, who wants to go? Fight it out amongst yourselves, guys. Fight it out amongst yourselves.
All right. I guess I'll go first. It looks like I'm first on the video, so I might as well start. Happy to be here. My name is Andrew Binger, here in Launchpad Newark, and artistic director for Yendor Theater Company, based in the city of Newark. And I know the other gentleman, the fine gentleman from Yendor, can talk a little bit more about some of the work we do on the visual arts end, but we kind of operate in the visual arts space here in the city of Newark and the greater Newark area, as well as the performing arts. And in performing arts, we're kind of playing catch up. We're a little bit newer. The visual art stuff has been happening for a while. So we started Yendor Theater Company in 2016. And pretty much Newark has a very vibrant art scene, and we're looking to bring theater to the city of Newark and have that be a regular repertoire here in the city of Newark, kind of like they have in some other cities that are local to us. And as well, you know, New York is sort of this theater capital of our country. So sort of continuing in that tradition. So that's kind of where we are. And it's obviously a challenge figuring out how do you do live theater in the midst of a pandemic. How do you really, do something where you're supposed to be gathered together and in the same space and sitting right next to each other, and the actors are supposed to be there and everyone's breathing in the same air. And, what does that look like when things go back to quote unquote normal? And there's some challenges in that. I mean, in the midst of, statewide changes in COVID and restrictions, the city of Newark, under the leadership of Mayor Baraka, has been sort of trying to make it be clear that the pandemic has impacted communities like the city of Newark very differently than it has other places in the state. So wanting to slow down opening up, even if the rest of the state is doing certain things, those things might not be applicable to our communities. And so we're just sort of in that space of navigating what that looks like to make sure that everyone's safe, and make sure that everyone can engage in this, but we're doing it in a smart way. I think that's a little bit of an overview of what we're doing here in the city of Newark, at least so far, as it concerns theater.
All right, and I'll just quickly introduce myself. I'm Karim Willis, the administrative director at Gendor. In its totality, we're like a boutique arts organization that really seeks to foster hope and healing through increasing access through arts and cultural programming, arts education programming, public art consultation, you name it, we do it. And, navigating COVID-19, the pandemic, has been such an interesting experience, and not to sound like an echo, but definitely having to learn how to pivot and kind of go with the flow, and really pausing to reassess where you've been or where you'd like to go and how best to get there. It definitely did put, like operations wise, and Malcolm could speak more to this, definitely put a damper or a pause in a lot of things that we had planned, like even our partnership with Launchpad Newark, with increasing professional development opportunities to the artist community that we seek to serve. Literally, we had one, and the other one was scheduled for March 18th, which, as you know, March 15th, the world was like, well, America was shut down. So we had to kind of figure out how would we serve them on the back end, or how we continue to serve the communities that need this kind of engagement. And we came up with some pretty innovative things that we could share later on in the show, but I'm going to allow Malcolm to introduce himself, and then we could, talk more.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, Malcolm Rowland, Chief Operating Officer here at Yendor. I handle primarily a lot of the visual art programming here Like Kareem said, COVID hit us in the midst of doing workshops and working with Launchpad and in a different capacity, bringing in some of our peers in art and trying to like build that community and on like how do we teach artists the business of art and where does regular function of business, where does that meet? We were trying to figure that out in COVID, kind of stopped us all. So we use the digital space to kind of pivot and to do performances and arts education, and really connect. We even done some mural tours over Zoom and stuff like that. It has been fun and it's been a challenge, but I think we found a way to kind of overcome it, and it definitely put traditional art stuff on hold. I mean, we didn't paint murals for months, and then out of nowhere, every mural job in the world fell out the sky. And from probably the end of October to November, we haven't stopped. We've been painting something about every other month. So it's been very interesting transition from no work at all for 4 months, 5 months to now you don't get a break at all. So it's been interesting and fun to say the least.
Thank you, Malcolm. And I think that's been an interesting thing that everyone's sort of struggling with is like, we're starting to return to this sort of phase of normalcy. And yet at the same time, there's so much going on. And at the same time, like there's not a lot of gas in everybody's tank. And so I think there was a recent article in the New York Times that talked a little bit about it being like the notion of languishing, right? Like you're not depressed and sad and you're happy things are working out and you're not like ecstatic and energized and fueled up. You're just kind of in this like state. And yet you just are like, I want to you're like bonking on the hill if you were riding. How's everybody getting through that? Because what's cool is that everyone here has been talking about all these other great initiatives and programs. And I know individually, like we've got an event coming up, we're doing all this stuff, but how are you managing that sort of balance between getting some momentum and motivation going, but at the same time, I mean, maybe you're not feeling that way, but I think most people are feeling like this weird sense of like super excited and also really tired. Does anyone want to talk about that?
I think COVID was very much an emotional, or still is an emotional stress, right? It attacks the body, but I feel like it's a mental gymnastics as well. And I think during the past year, more than a year, I figured out how to just sit down. Like before, I think it was keep going until you can't go anymore. And now I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna sit down. I got my candle going right here. I drink my tea, and I take a break and I take care of me. And I think that this past year is a reminder. Like I think another kind of catchphrase is self-care. Everybody saying self-care, it's another one. But I mean, what does that really, really mean? It's not just bubble baths and facials and foot massages, right? It really is that too, but it really is about the spirits. How are you caring for your soul, and how are you taking care of the space that is around you as well?
I love that.
And so I think that's where I've been. It's like my space. I got my plant, I got my candle, I got my tea. I'm just like, I'm here at my house. I don't have anywhere to go. And
well,
but I'm good.
We talked to our controller today, and she really is the controller who controls all things. But she was like, I got all this stuff going on, and I was like, well, why don't you just sit down and have a coffee and don't do anything and don't feel guilty about it? And she's like, that's the part that gets me. And I was like, you need to just chill. Why don't you take the last 15 minutes of this call and just go chill out? And she was like, that sounds like not a bad idea, but it's true. Like we get so worked up and like whether or not you can do that. So I love that. Sabrina Short gets tons of stuff done and she still takes a tea break.
I take naps. I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
Full on nap.
It's all about the nap ministry.
It's like they did it
Nap
wrong.
ministry.
All right, so I'm hearing it. Take a break.
It's
Naps. Who else has another tip?
Aaron?
it's well, I know for us here in California, I think everybody else, nobody else is in California except for me right now. And we know, I don't know if you guys know, California is super fast, and it's very expensive in California. So it has been a challenge for us, especially those who have businesses. It's already hard enough just living here, period. But I think one thing that I found, like Sabrina said, was self-care, but also having open dialogues and really bonding with people who really matter to you, right? Whether it be friends, mates, rekindling broken relationships, those things help. Like honestly, I have a wife, and we just spoke recently about how she was feeling throughout the pandemic, and me, I'm like, California, we moved, so I'm gone. Like I can't say I'm sorry, we moved, and my wife, we caught COVID early back last year as well. For us, it felt like a really bad headache, honestly. That's all we really got. We didn't lose any of the taste of any taste or anything like that. We got tested, and by the time we got tested, they said we already had quarantined ourselves for 8 days. Like, okay, just stay home for another 5 days, and you guys would be good. But we already had felt better by the time we went to go get tested. And we stayed home for another 7 days, and that was the time we got the bond. But it wasn't until recently, after she expressed that she felt like she was trapped within herself. We've never had this happen to us. Some people telling you, government telling you, don't go out, don't go to anything, and depression is like major. So, then I got to call some friends and check on them, see how they're doing, and a lot of them express the same sentiment. So, and you have to remember to take care of yourself, because you can't pour from an empty cup. And that's one thing that I learned, was to do the things that I was able to do in my arena. I picked up writing. I finished one of my new book. I'm an author now. Didn't know I had that in me. I started writing poetry again. And yeah, so even though we're in a fast-paced place, and we have beautiful beaches and mountains, so we did do those things. We stay, California is kind of open. It's not open, but it's enough to where there's a lot of space out here. We can do things. So take drives. We did that, and yeah, we stayed as safe as possible. And that's just one thing I learned, was to check on your friends, really check on them, not the regular, how are you, and yeah, we're all going through it, so let's just see you're fine. And no, hey, how are you really doing? What's going on? Can we send you a care package? Show people that you care, because this is the time to do that.
Nathan?
Yeah, man, I my self-care routine was garbage before before COVID, because I could channel a lot of energy from social. I'm an extrovert, and fairly gregarious, and that's where I go. Networking events and all these things, I leave those energized, right? Like I leave that type of environment pumped up, and then that energy gets me through everything else. And so when all of that went away and I was left with quiet, like, whoa, now what do I do with that? So, and then realizing that sucking energy from those environments is fine to be pumped up, but it's unsustainable. And it's not, it is kind of an addictive energy. And like any addiction, it's numbing. So I found sobriety and sober living early end of 2019, and every single day of the pandemic, I was just so grateful for sobriety, of not battling addiction in the midst of that space. And so my heart really goes out for people who, and I know many people found sobriety through it, which, like, kudos to that, because that's amazing to have found it through that. So for me, self-care really showed up as being finding quiet and being safe with myself and being comfortable with myself and not needing to channel energy. And so coming out of it, I'm so pumped to go back into those environments of networking and those environments where that energy will be extra, right? Like I won't be living off that energy. It'll be extra energy. And I'm excited for that. And I'm really grateful for the learnings that I had through COVID. And so for me, it's mostly excitement. The fear is that I'll lose the good habits that I actually gained from COVID. So the balance is about, hey, maintaining sleep routines, maintaining exercise routines that I've actually really developed some pretty good habits through quarantine and COVID. And the fear is that I'll lose them.
It is funny, like the introvert extrovert conversation was obviously a challenge for those of us extroverts to shift into a place. I was surprised I survived. I actually enjoyed it. I was like, oh, wait a second. I actually like boundaries. I never knew that about myself. This is much better. So I'm actually living in like a little bit of like fear around all the things coming back in. So I want to maintain my boundaries, but your extrovert introvert conversation is interesting because now you're not going to be, it's like seeking behavior, right? You're not seeking the energy. The energy is just going to be, I like how you said it, extra. So we'll see. Yeah. All right. Who's up next?
I mean,
Karim, I'm picking on you.
No worries. I mean, I just want to quickly shout out the importance of belonging to a village, a tribe, a circle, something, because in those instances when I could not, go down to the school or go down to Launchpad or whatever it is, wherever we would congregate, having those virtual connections was extremely important. And more importantly, I remember early in the pandemic, we normally had team meetings, and we decided to have team meetings, but of a different nature, right? It wasn't to talk about work. It wasn't to talk about how we're going to survive this. It was really to kind of check in and kind of respond to the question, like, how is your heart? And I enjoyed that. And especially with Malcolm. Malcolm is really big on reminding us how much we've done and how much we have yet to do, and how it's okay right now that we're in this space, right? Like we'll be fine. Because 2019 was a good year for us. Like our history has been complicated. We had a few transitions. Our founder passed away in 2017. We decided to keep running in 2018. So of course we were just kind of like finding our footing. And in 2019 came, and we had what was like a stellar year on the performance side, on the visual art side. And now we have all these big ideas and aspirations and dreams for 2020. And it comes, and Miss Rona is like, pump your brakes, lady. You thought you were gonna do all of this. You need to calm down. And so it was really great to have those villages that I could tap into to just remind me. Like I'm also going through my PhD process. Like I'm writing my dissertation. So of course it's a lot on all of that. Thank you. It's a lot on the psyche, right? And so it's like it's good to have those different pockets of people that you can plug into, so that when you're feeling depleted, when you're feeling like you don't want to continue anymore, when you're figuring out why in the world did I pursue this in the first place, they're there to remind you that it's okay. It's okay. So I'm grateful for that.
All right.
That's amazing.
Okay. Andrew or Malcolm, who would like to go? And then
I mean, the only thing that I will say that's kind of in a different vein, and I definitely, I'm all about the self-care, and I did my first ever staycation ever. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go somewhere. I'm not going to really hang out. I don't need to really tell anybody. I just need a little bit of time away from what's happening to just slow down. And I was like, I've always thought about it, but life was moving so quickly. I was like, I finally got a chance to just take a breather. But the other thing that I think has been kind of keeping us going, and it really, I think, as I listened to everyone, and Nathan touched on this a little bit in his introduction, is just like the work that we do, being connected to something that's, deeper than us, and having a true passion for it, and kind of like just being connected to your purpose. And I think that's been a driving force of like, why do I even, like Karim said, why do I even want to do X, Y, and Z, and is it worth it? And being in a space where I realized for myself, a lot of things before COVID, I took on to my plate just to do, or it seemed like a cool thing, or it seemed like great to or opportunity, whatever it was. And as I really began to think about it, I got to weigh like, I don't really find the value in this. I'm just doing it to do it because we're supposed to be productive and we're supposed to be involved and have our hands in many things. So a lot of things that I was working on, working towards, or teams or whatever it was, some of those things I had to say, yep, this doesn't really serve me anymore. It doesn't have a place in my life at this juncture, and it's okay. And not being like, oh, I'm letting people down or any. So I have to be honest. There's no reason to, forego what I could be doing to take care of myself and rest or whatever to do this thing anymore. So I think that was a big thing, learning what kind of things are really valuable and important and being able to assess those that maybe just aren't.
Awesome. I was going to reflect. Can I go?
I was trying to get you to go. And then we'll get to Malcolm.
Sabrina, you'll recall this a little bit. I think when I've been comparing it throughout the pandemic to Hurricane Katrina and going through Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. And, the interesting thing was after, obviously it didn't last a year, but a lot of the rebuilding did. Afterwards, myself and a number of our friends and, close community didn't necessarily take care of ourselves. There was a lot of, drinking and depression and divorce, and it became what the stress and the trauma that people have been through didn't necessarily manifest during the event, because the event, you're sort of fed by so much adrenaline and what's happening today. Are we opening up, or masks over or not? A lot of it, I think, in the languishing that you're talking about, you start to feel it now. You're like, oh, now we're through it. We got to do all this work to sort of build back. So anyway, it's really heartening to hear all of the, self-care, all the healthy habits, even just, the spirituality I'm hearing today. I think that, the more everybody can maintain that for themselves and care for themselves, but also spread that, right? Spread that love, spread that in our communities. The building back will happen. We all have to keep our energy reserves up so that we're going to get to where we were, or where the new hill we want to climb, the new direction we want to take. But I want to wish everybody, the absolute best along this journey, and it's awesome to sort of hear there. Yeah, I know. Now you want to go to Malcolm.
We'll wrap with Malcolm.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say I guess actually I'm an introvert and an only child. So being with self, or being in some type of solitude, it's kind of my bag. It's where I exist the best. I'm also a painter and a visual artist, so it's a lot of solitude into itself, and that it's a lot of weathering the storm too, seasonally, in terms of your finances and just how you operate. So it's funny that Kareem mentioned like us having those team meetings and kind of building together, not about work, but just on how we're doing. There's another into that for me of like waking up in the morning with one of our other very close friends, and like working out in the morning and meditating, and like not working out for ego or for look or aesthetic, but kind of just, I need some fresh air. I need some time to myself in the morning. And I need to be by the water. So those things made whatever hustle we had to come up with for the pandemic, or whatever overworking we had to do, that morning morning time for myself really gave the balance. So things like that, just getting out of the house for the purpose of just walking and not going anywhere. Those things really help to balance out all of the hop back on the phone and do Zoom and meetings, and the pressure of how we're going to pivot and turn the company around and stuff like that. That balance, that morning balance, was very needed.
Thanks, Malcolm. It's interesting. We often we have like a very broad member base at Launchpad, right? So everybody's very different. They're working on different things. They have different businesses. And we used to try to think of ways to find commonality. And so the notion of like that journey of entrepreneurship is a natural commonality that we can all come to. But what to me is interesting is just reflecting on even today is that we're each getting something from each other, from our perspectives, because we've actually shared a collective trauma. And we're like so much more, you read that book about like your broken open-heartedness, right? And so you're like, the whole idea of a mask, or not a COVID mask, just a general mask, but like the whole idea of putting on an air or being present, like now, I would bet last year, a year and a half ago, no one would have thought to have brought up self-care in a work type environment. And then to have gained so much shared understanding of what that works for you or learn from each other, right? And I think that idea that we're all sort of connected through this experience, and I hope we don't lose that, right? I hope we don't lose that breathing that we've been given because we've been forced to slow down, and I hope we don't lose that connectedness of the emotion of that. And I think we should all hold ourselves accountable to it, right? We've been checking in with our friends and checking in with our community and doing all these things, but we can't leave that behind. And we were going to talk about a bunch of different things, but I love where this conversation went. So I think it feels like a good end.
Yeah.
But I would encourage you guys to help us all collectively to not forget this lesson and this learning over the year, and realize that, like, what do we take forward, the good and the bad, and how do we take that into what the future looks like, and how do we become a better, more heart-filled, connected society from it? That's your purpose for the day.
And to model it for our teams, and to implement it into processes is key, because everyone, you can only do what you're seeing, what you see. And when you're trying to grow in a space, it has to be allowed. Even though it's talked about, it has to be allowed and modeled.
Thank you, Nathan, for bringing it to relevancy for how we can bring it into work. I appreciate that. And that's exactly right. And, when we talk about the future of work, that is something that, like, some of these big companies are going to get wrong, right? Because they don't know how to match like that interconnectedness. And that's where kind of as entrepreneurs, we benefit, because we can play a different game and run a different program and work with our people in a different way and be creative.
I also think, Nathan, in the end, that allowing space for authenticity in the middle of the process.
Yeah.
On a get to process that we forget, right, how to do what feels good and natural for each one of us. And what might work for one person may not work for someone else. So just allowing that space to allow people to be, period.
And from the business perspective, you lose more money on burnout and retraining than you do on vacation time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
I think everybody's in need of a healthy summer vacation. Go commune with the people, your loved ones or family or friends who you haven't seen through this.
Unless they're in Canada.
We wish everybody in Canada a lot of luck with
I
this.
really do. You guys, you don't want to see what happens in Canada if they cancel cottage country season. Canadians live for 10 months of the year in basic hibernation so that they can come out for July and August. So this is the only reason why you can survive living in Canada.
And on that note,
with that,
we want to thank everybody for joining us today, and thank you for being part of the Launchpad Nation, and wish everybody the best in their continued journeys going through this, and as we all recover from it. So and we'll do another one of these. We'll check in again soon with everybody.
Yeah, we'll make you guys come back
And
soon.
hopefully, and now we can come see you in person. So hopefully start seeing people in
We're
person.
seeing Nathan in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very
We're
pumped,
heading to
y'all.
Nashville.
Thanks everybody. Good to see
All
everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, you
All
guys.
right, take
All
care,
right.
everyone.
See you soon, guys. As we're wrapping up, next week we have an exciting long-term entrepreneur named Andrew Hyde, friend, entertainer, dreamer, and he is going to be joining us. And we're so excited to talk to him about.
And he's been on an interesting journey. He's sort of just traveling all around, digital nomad.
He is digital nomading. He may or may not be involved in Bitcoin.
Ooh, are we gonna get a
Ooh, we're gonna get
crypto
some.
update?
We're gonna get some crypto tips and tricks, and nothing that one would ever act on. So just saying, we're gonna learn a little more about his crypto journey.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today. That was an awesome show. Really fun to check in with everybody.
Yeah.
And we will see you next week.
Thanks, Ariel.